Hello, hello, YouTube. Today we are taking a look at my Witch Hunter build, which is a slight deviation on a pure wizard, originally intended to use just straight swords and sword sorceries of numerous types. But I like to have way too many things in my arsenal, and so I diversified my stats just a little. We have the Millicent's Prosthesis giving us a tasty 5 points in Dex, which is very nice for wielding many tools, like the Antspur Rapier or the Death's Poker. Showing all the weapons on screen now. I probably gave myself far too many options, and so if you'd like, you could probably reorganize the stats on this build to have almost 50 intelligence and 50 vigor. And then thanks to the Flask of Wondrous Physic, you can hit that 60 int breakpoint. Because this class started as a prisoner, it's pretty easy to optimize for a pure caster around level 80. So I needed a couple extra points, or an extra point, and I also diversified the points a little bit out of int and vigor in order to give myself access to more weapons. Did I need all those weapons? Not particularly, though like I said earlier, I like having options. I like being able to switch. It's because I'm not the smartest with a straight sword. In this level bracket, a straight sword can do a lot of what you need, especially when comboed with your spells. Do you see that damage? That's pretty tasty damage. 45 int and 45 vigor is still pretty well and good. Here we have an example of Night Maiden's Mist. I like to call it the War Crimes spell, because it's a gaseous cloud. It's wonderful for controlling the environment, getting a lot of chip damage. In this bracket of level 80 and lower, it feels particularly powerful. If people were to linger in the cloud for its full duration, I think it deals like 1600 to 1800 damage, which is no laughing matter. So it's very nice to have on any repertoire of spells, in my opinion. This character is a little less focused on the bolt casting side of things, like the Astrologian Asta War Wizard build was. It's supposed to be a little more centered on the carry and sword sorceries. Am I particularly good with them? No. Am I trying to get better? Yes, because there are some nice combos you can get off. I will try to point them out as they become available in the video feed before your eyes. But Carrying Greatsword, the generic horizontal slash sorcery, the big one, not the little carrion slicer, can combo into a straight sword hit. It can combo into a lot of lightweight weapon hits. The Shamshir is also an option. I think you could probably combo it with any light curved sword. But the straight sword's the more notable option in my opinion. And there's other spell pseudo combos you can mix and match together that I need to practice. You can do all sorts of things, combine Gavel of Haima, the Carrion Slicer, Carrion Greatsword, Carrion Piercer, and I should probably get around to figuring out what a Duelist Moonblade can do as well. But the area control and the harassment and the amount of options you have, even though you don't have a whole slew of mind, is quite nice. Speeding up the footage for a second here, kind of anticlimactic, but I kept this footage mostly because Carrion Greatsword can combo into a straight sword slash. I don't know if I hit him there or if it was the high page, but the timing was just right. I've looked at the footage closely, frame by frame. I still can't tell. Doesn't matter too much, but here we have a nice little exchange. I thought they were going to just fog wall me, but no. They decide to stand and fight. We find out that the Phantom has no health, so we might as well focus him. Though I do like to eat my Phantoms first before the main course of the host. Just makes for better footage, even if I am not the best invader. And there we are, free camming the Carrying Grandeur spell. I think I only charged it once, and it killed the guy. That was a fun little moment for me, free camming Carrying Grandeur. I think it's a good spell, and you land it more than you think you would, but it's still situational. It's not your all-uses spinning slash or something like that. Multi-use. I will say this, though. If you're going for a closer to a pure intelligence build, Carrying Grandeur on any old straight sword will perform better than Carrying Grandeur on the Carrion Knight sword. which has its scaling split fairly evenly between strength and int. Another instance on screen of war crimes. It's hard for me to approach because of all those halos, but you can see that the war crimes are just chipping at him. His Ash of War he's spamming makes him take steps forward into the gas. I've definitely put him on the back foot here. And then, kaboom, it's all over. I am wearing the Graven Mask Talisman and the Godfrey icon, which buffs charging attacks, specifically spells, Ashes of War that can be charged. And then the Graven Mask Talisman, which buffs spells. So, good amount of damage. Here was a funny moment. I met Stielovsky in my invasions. I accidentally got pulled in as a blue, so I decided to say hi. He instantly turns violent. Why wouldn't he? He has good reason to hate blues of any variety. I just wanted to see what he was staring at. I wasn't immediately hostile. I didn't really have a hope of being able to take on him. He's a far more consistent and professional player. But I thought I could dance a bit and give it my best shot. Now, he lives somewhere in Poland, I believe, and I'm in the middle of the United States, so our ping was a little over 200 with each other, unfortunately. Just a consequence of living far apart. That's just how it goes. My internet's decent. I'm sure his internet's decent. So, it's just not enough where distance is concerned. I mean, if you think about it, crossing the whole planet in 200 ms, or however the ping works or is measured, that's incredible. Is it good enough for a game like this to feel fantastic? No, it's a noticeable delay. But the fight ended up going in Stielovsky's favor. The PvE killed the hosts before I could do anything and before they could slaughter me mercilessly. Some of you might be wondering how I knew of a certainty that was Stielovsky. I suppose it's not an absolute certainty, but it looked exactly like his level 85 build that he uses for invasions, plays on stream, uploads YouTube videos about, as well as in my peer-to-peer info application I have attached to my Elden Ring to show me who I'm connecting to on Steam and how much ping they have approximately. It said his name was Stielovsky, so either it's him or a very good impersonator. This was, on screen, just a long fight. Because I am trying out more playstyles and diversifying, I'm not necessarily practicing as much as I ought to. And I should really be practicing more to get better and make better clips, but I, at the moment, just kind of making different sorts of clips. And so the fight drug on a little longer, but it's nice to have tools to harass and to poke. Give people a stack of war crimes, but then be good with the straight sword. The R2s are wonderful for being good with the straight sword. There's a clip that'll come up that I will try to highlight when it shows up, how important those R2s are for damage output and range on the straight sword. You're definitely playing at a disadvantage when you're using just one. This is utilizing a lot of tricks and tips and muscle memory and gut instinct reactions that were useful in the sword and board video, but I don't always have a shield. Instead, I get sorceries, which I think are slightly more useful, but that's just because I'm bad with shields, personally. There's people who know when to block very well, and they can parry on a dime and things like that. But here we are enjoying ourselves some casual souls. And so the nice thing that I get, because I'm not using just the straight sword, is I have access to other weapons, like heavy thrusting sword, where I can chase people down. Suddenly my damage output is a bit higher. My capacity to follow and harass is greatly increased, and we're able to do a 1400 damage burst to that fellow in a handful of hits, which was enough to finish him off. 1400 health, that means he was in the ballpark like us, as somewhere around 40-45 points of vigor. But it was all in all a good fight. Had the host not left that phantom alone, they probably would have had a much better chance. This on screen is exemplifying how unfortunate Phantom Finger is as an item. There are some parts of the game where it just does not work. You just use it over and over, and if you want to get somewhere different and it keeps putting you in the same place, try to use the Phantom Recusant Finger, or the Phantom Finger, whichever one you have. When you're in the same place as you just spawned, it seems to encourage the game to put you anywhere else. But this on screen, I feel like I keep saying this exemplifies blank. This exemplifies blank. Maybe I'm getting boring and repetitious. Terra Magica plus Canon of Haima, and as well as the charging and the spell damage talismans, easily takes down the poor Phantom that only has 700 HP. It was probably overkill, honestly. But it's nice to have those options. The warning shot was the Cannon of Haima. They knew I was there. They knew I was having trouble getting up that cliff. And to be fair, all the waiting around was itching for action. I saw the double hits of the fists, was hoping I could get lucky with a Hail Mary parry, but it just wasn't happening. My brain's not large enough to predict something that fast, unfortunately. But we have the Charger too. We out-trade him. Not the most glamorous fight, but I like the the Cannon of Haima moment. Who doesn't like the Cannon of Haima moments? In fact, let's have another. Kaboom! Instantly kills the Phantom, almost kills the host. And I decide to start charging up another one. But as I start charging up the second Cannon of Haima, I hear something die down below, and I know he is no longer up there. Able to instantly book it around the corner and find our friend again. We fought him before in this same area. I think he had looped around the whole dungeon and jumped down here for, I think, Carrion Grandeur is actually the Ash of War that's on top of that cliff where I killed this buddy. And so I'm able to practice with my sword sorceries again, because I want to get much better at spell comboing. I think this is a character I'm going to keep for a while. I might change the dex value. I don't know if I need 20. It does give me access to Death's Poker as well as the Death's Ritual Spear, which is a wonderful utility in niche situations. It kind of works as a pseudo great bow as long as you're within lock-on distance, because it can rain a bunch of spirit spears on your foe. But 20 dex is a lot, and those points could be better suited in vigor and intelligence, respectively. It's if you really go purist with this build and accept that you're only using rapiers and straight swords as your physical form of weaponry, or maybe daggers as well, and ignore great swords, heavy thrusting swords, things of that like, then you could put those points in Faith and Int, or not Faith and Int, Int and Vigor. And you can just have a lot more damage, very tasty, and you'll probably get a lot better at the basics. The basics of being a Spellblade. It's kind of funny how the straight sword shines most when it is paired with something else, either a casting catalyst, or a shield, or another straight sword is probably where it is the very best. But this build was me trying to be not so meta, I suppose. But having a handful of meta options on hand should I need them. And here's the reason why I want to keep the poker. Just being able to detonate an explosion, create a trail of ice. Hit per hit, the Death's Poker is far worse than my straight sword magic infused, just because I don't have dex. It's a dex weapon with an int requirement. However, I believe the Ash of War scales with your intelligence, so if you're just using it as an Ash of War stick, a pure int build will do well even if you need 20 or so dexterity. What is it with Phantoms helping out hosts always having Dragon Breath? They're allowed to have it. It's just kind of funny. I feel like I see it an awful lot. I guess it's one of those things where it's just good, so why not use it? They always use it at interesting times. I feel like if they were a little smarter with their placement of it, especially waiting till I'm at like half health or something, or maybe trying to disengage a little bit for a heal, they could capitalize and punish me. Almost makes me want to throw together a Dragon Breath build, but I don't know if that'll be an exciting video. Dragon Breath feels dirty to me. If dual spears with Bloodhound Step or dual lances with Bloodhound Step feel agitating and hard to fight against, Dragon Breath is a whole different department. In a similar category, but a whole different range of agitation. I believe it's worth noting that I'm using Glintstone Stars, the little triple burst spell, as opposed to the 6 burst variant, because at this level, it's more cost effective. I don't have a huge pool of mana. I can't be wasting on the biggest of spells. It takes like 2 Adula's Moonblades to eat up that poor little mana bar. That's another thing that you're sacrificing when you decide you want more kinds of weapons, is your mana sucks. And ideally you would be able to get, if you were to completely lower your strength and your dex to just wield straight swords and maybe rapiers, you would have enough points to get to like 48, 49 in vigor and intelligence, and you'd still have 2 or so points left over to get a couple points in mind. You get like 14 or maybe 16 if you manage it a little different. And 14 and 16 feels a lot better than 12, I'll tell you that, but sacrifices had to be made. I understand that I made a Witch Hunter. It's a little more like a Spellblade, I suppose, but I liked the idea of Witch Hunter Jaren, somebody who hunts witches but also is familiar with magic and the martial arts themselves. So the idea was somebody who uses the magic to hunt people who use the magic improperly, spell spammers and the like. That's why I like having a spell parry shield on this build as well. Being able to deal with those is wonderful, though you have to pick your battles when it comes to parrying spells. Not all spells are worth parrying. An easy way to determine whether or not a spell is worth parrying is, number one, does it have a lot of projectiles? If it has too many projectiles, you'll likely get hit by a good few while only parrying 1 or 2. And does the spell come at you at a very predictable pace? Generally, things like Glintstone Pebble or the smaller shards are worth parrying. The comets and the larger spells can be a little tough and can be catastrophic if your timing is bad. Some spells, like the Carrion Moon, the Carrion Full Moon, or the Dark Moon spells, those ones you need to parry a little early, but once you get the hang of it, they're not too bad. So, being able to turn people's damage against them is wonderful, and you can throw that on any build. That's not a wizard-specific thing. Though, if you have 12 points of faith and I think 30 points of strength, you can wield the Erdtree Sentinel Shield and have 2 forms of spell parry. One that's the Retaliatory Carrion Blades, and the other that's the big ol' Holy Bolt from the Tree Sentinel Great Shield. Gotta appreciate a wizard who's trying his best to wield a huge strength Falling Star Beastjaw, as well as, I think he had the Carrion Scepter, which implies he has 60 intelligence, which makes me think he's probably lacking in other departments. I don't think he had the most health, so... Oh yeah, sure enough. He doesn't have the most health. But he could be also a higher level. I believe the way the invasion brackets tend to work is most of your bracket as an invader is above you. And for some reason, I've never seen this interaction before, but because the Erdtree Guardian, or the Erdtree Avatar, because he was targeting the Blue Phantom when he died with the bolts, it seemed to auto-lock on me and hit me a handful of times. Kind of interesting. I've never seen anything quite like that. I know he can hit me, but I've never noticed him to lock onto me as an invader before with his many holy bolts ability. Another train of thought that just occurred to me, if you decide to go the pure wizard route where you put most of your points into int and vigor as you level, right, and then a couple points into mind, not a whole lot, just a couple, you don't need a ton. Some people go nuts with that stat, you don't need too many. Honestly, you probably don't need more than 20 when you're getting up to the higher levels, 137, 150, in terms of the meta. And so if you are doing the pure wizard thing, your future points can very easily be allocated to get you a little extra armor, a little extra mind, and still keep those things specific and specialized. This interaction made me feel bad. I was chasing this guy really hard. I decided to depart from him because he was just getting hammered. And I had this neat interaction where I just nailed the spacing with everything and wiped out the Phantom. I'm not that great at spacing, so it was nice to have a spacing moment. Poor guy couldn't even hit me with his greatsword. And so I start chasing the host. I'm like, I gave you a breather, let's do this fight. And he starts shaking his talisman at me. And it slowly dawns on me. I go, oh no. He's given up hope. I didn't mean to backstab him. I felt bad. I started kicking at him. I'm like, please, come on, buddy, fight me. We're just having a jolly old time. You're not that far from the grace. Give me a fight. Something I'll remember. And he's being nice and waving, thinking I'm being friendly, when I want to fight, I just want him to try for it. I want him to feel it. You know, I'm like, come on, I just got a little knife, what do you got to fear? Fight me, darn you, fight me! And he jumps off the cliff, he takes his own life. It was a sad, miserable experience. I had 2 of these experiences back to back where I just felt awful after the case. Here's a fella here buffing with Sacred Blade. I don't know if he was aware of the invulnerability timer, but I'm able to hit him with a fully charged R2 and then an R1 follow-up. 900 damage-ish. Finished him off. Felt awful. I made a mistake where I started recording this clip late, so we missed the first part where I used some war crimes on them, and I'm able to get a carrying greatsword off on that phantom right then and there and finish him off with a follow-up slash from the Shamshir, which is wonderful damage output. That's kind of where this build shines. You do okay damage with your weapons, but it's not phenomenal. It's good enough, right? But then if you combo it with your spells, specifically the sword sorceries where my staff really shines, then we can just have some tasty pseudo combos that I need to practice more, and I should have gotten more clips, but I was just trying to get a feel for the build generally. And we're able to just make mincemeat of that poor host with his greatsword with just a little Shamshir. People don't expect you to mix in the heavies. This interaction was a fun one for me. I saw them a little bit earlier in the dungeon. They immediately bolted up the elevator. I'm like, well, great. I know they have a trap waiting for me. Why wouldn't they? This is a dungeon where I deal with traps often, it feels like, from gankers and players. Because at the top of this elevator is a dart trap, an electric dart trap. So I get to the top, instant dragon breath. I take him down, deal about half of his health in a single hit, turn on the dart trap, and you hear the phantom die. The dart trap actually finished him off somehow. And so I'm left to chase down this host. Everything from his perspective has gone from bad to worse. He doesn't do a whole lot of damage with his poor little rapier. And so I'm able to chase him down. Carrying Slicer is a wonderful mix-up from the Great Sword if people find the timing a little too predictable. I am curious to know what fellow Soulsborne players' interactions are like when it comes to people like sending them a friend request on Steam after a duel. This was a fellow I had a handful of fights with. This was the most exciting, so I decided to keep this one in terms of footage. And so he friended me after 1 or 2 of the fights, and I haven't done anything with it, right? Don't really care to. Every time I've had somebody send me a friend request on Steam with the intention of interacting with me, save one interaction, it's been negative, unfortunately. It's somebody who's usually saying something along the lines of, I'm sick of seeing your build, your playstyle sucks, you're sweaty, or whatever. It's always negative. Only one experience I had where somebody said that that I had a good fight, and they actually wanted to talk about the true combos I was using on them, and then they wanted to share the true combos that they had learned with me, that they used on me during that fight. That was the one positive interaction. And I should probably linger on those positive interactions more, but now it's this weird gray space for me where I don't know what that other person wants when they send a friend request. I don't know what to do with them altogether. It seems that people don't have nice things to say. It seems that they just want to trash talk, and if that's the case, I don't care. I just want to have fun. You know, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. That's a part of the game. And I don't really care if you have something salty to say afterwards. If you have something uplifting to say, that's the type of thing I like to go for personally. But that's the nature of that anonymous system. There is no way to tell what the intent of that other person is, and that's fair. I remember I ran into Gigas Thickus, another YouTuber, at one point in time, and I actually really appreciated his build. We had a duel. It was a nice fight. I wanted to tell him in my message that, hey, I think you're a way more consistent player than I am, and that I won through a fluke, and I really like your content. Have a nice day. And, of course, he didn't accept the response. And why should he? He has no reason to believe what I have to say is so it's definitely a double-edged sword. And look at this Moonlight Greatsword damage at level 80. One of those hits hit for 800 damage. I think that's when the frost proc happened. That's just crazy. That is substantial damage at that level. And it only gets better if you have a couple more points in intelligence. But with the physic that we're running basically 55 int for the first part of any invasion. Here's the Spirit Call ritual. This thing is gnarly. I was able to fold to nothing that poor host, or not the poor host, the Phantom from a distance just by mashing dash and war button. Not a proud moment, but it does show off what the build is capable of in a pinch. Now, it's kind of an ambush tool, honestly. I wouldn't use it in a regular old fight willy-nilly, and if people are moving a whole lot, they can run out of the range of it. Almost killed this guy with the Moon Veil, but we have another one of those tasty Alt F4 moments. I want to know what the counter is for Alt F4. Leave a comment below if you know what the counter is. I sure as heck don't. But Spirit Call Ritual, I wanted to show off more parts of the build as I get into the later clips, not just rely on the sword and staff. But even Moonveil can chunk these guys for a good amount. Even Bullgoat, which is hard to stumble him, is taking good damage from it. Now, I'm not the best with Moonveil by any means, and I guess Moonveil's a relatively low skill option. But I wanted to show it off nonetheless. Get the Phantom in some of the war crimes, able to take down the post relatively easily. And I get greedy here. I shouldn't have lingered. Had I backed off, I would have lived, but he kills me. Justified in killing me. He gets this little smidgen of satisfaction at my death. Now this guy I admire. He's just doing a Taunter's Tongue run, and he's using the Draconic Tree Sentinel Club, the one that reminds me of the Haveltooth. It's not a very good strength weapon. Its scaling's relatively poor. It's one of the few strength weapons that actually does electric or lightning damage. There we see that the Moonlight Greatsword's beam attack does not work on an elevator. But a neat battleground nonetheless. I appreciate that guy. Even if I got in way more hits, I appreciate what he was trying to do. Honest Taunter's Tongue is a rare sight indeed. I have a talking head in my life, a beloved person, I should say, who looks upon these sorts of invasions with a criticism in mind, right? And the criticism is that I should always give people a fair shot. I should signal that I am there, be as honorable as possible, which is alluring, absolutely. There's something about being an honorable invader and then winning that tastes a little extra special than using every dirty tactic available to me. Right, but their criticism even continues to, I shouldn't have the element of surprise against them as well. And I'm still mixed feelings towards that when it comes to whether or not you should surprise people. I think it's situational. Sometimes it's too good of an opportunity to pass up. That doesn't make it right necessarily, and right versus wrong is wholly arbitrary in the context of a silly video game. But as I attempt to develop these videos and kind of have a personality, a tone of voice, a character I can rely on for these videos, it's nice to know what I stand for. Am I trying to be honorable? Am I trying to be just simply casual? Am I doing what's just fun and goofy? Am I trying to be sweaty? Am I trying to just be as good as I can? Am I trying to goof off professionally, look cool, what have you? Whatever the channel's persona turns into. And there's Carrion Piercer right there that hit him on the turn. I've been hit by Carrion Piercer doing nonsense like that. Always throws me off. I don't know why it does that, but it does. The hitbox feels a little odd while you're turning. To return to my original thought, the concept of honor amongst invasions, right? Where I am here to sap the resources from and hopefully provide a nice story to my opponent. And here we're fighting that nice Tree Sentinel Maul guy again. I forget what the weapon's called. But losing my train of thought here, appreciating this fellow. Morality, you know, the niceties of saying hi to a person first before you brutally slaughter them in a video game. Does that make all the difference in the world? Do they appreciate it? Does it just get me more losses? I don't know. It's something that requires a little more thought that I should probably devote to in the middle of this episode. I say middle. We're nearing the end. Anybody who can look at the little time bar at the bottom of the video can see that. But here's a new thought for you, a public service announcement. Come up with some sort of melee caster. Whether you be the sort of fellow who has lots of spells, you're doing Faith Int, and you're just combining them for spell combos, a pure caster, right? Who's getting spell combos at melee range. Or maybe somebody who uses a straight sword in pyromancy, or straight sword in lightning, or straight sword in sorceries. Try to do some melee casting. Oh man, I wish there was some sort of melee lightning spell or incantation. That would be super cool. Why don't they have that? Maybe we can hope for the DLC. Do I think it's going to happen? No. I don't think we've had much of a melee option for lightning incantations. But here is a swap to a Moonveil. I miss because I'm bad, but he goes for the heal immediately after. And it's a nice cleanup. I think that's where Moonveil shines personally and feels slightly more honest, is when the guy is healing. Anyway, here's the build again. Going to show it off in rapid succession. If I tab through the things too fast, you can always go to the first minute of the video where I also included the build. Witch Hunter Ula. Really had fun with this one. I'm going to keep her, though how I'm going to change her has yet to be discovered. Thank you for joining me today. This was a fun character to play as. I have more in the works, so stay tuned, and I hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.